That was pretty scary
Mm.
because
Well,
there was a cow in the middle of the tornado. I remember seeing that cow going around like,
yeah.
"Arr."
What is even the purpose? You're wasting your money paying for insurance every single month or so. Does that mean you're going to neglect your foundation?
Mm.
Mm.
You need to make sure your foundation is strong. And if something happens to that house, if something happens to that household, ultimately you're responsible.
Mm. Washed away. So when God comes back, I don't have anything to show. Hello and welcome back to the Hopeless Podcast, or welcome to the Hopeless Podcast if you're new here. My name is Sophia, I'm your host today, and we have our two regulars, Joseph and Jason, joining us today. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for having us.
No worries, thanks for coming on. Today we have a very interesting topic though. We are looking at the housing crisis, what is going on with that, and how's your foundations? What do you guys think about this topic?
Well, I think definitely there's a lot of issues. I try and keep abreast of the news on the housing crisis. And
Mm.
what I do know is there's a lot of problems with real estate, people trying to get on the property ladder, but also people being done for really badly or poorly designed properties. So um, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued about the topic.
Awesome. What about you, Joseph?
Yeah, no, it's definitely true that currently we are in a recession and that people are struggling to find a house in the point of view of a renter and also of a buyer. Mostly because like people can't with the you know lockdown, people couldn't go anywhere that were like restricted to only this place, and people were looking to settle down because they couldn't go anywhere. And when push comes to shove, yeah, the economy boomed when it shouldn't have at the beginning with all the stocks and crypto and stuff, and then it fell back down again. So
Hmm. Cool. Well, I'm just looking at some housing stats from in between 2019 to 2020.
Mhm.
And it's surprising that 11% of households reported major structural problems in their current dwelling.
Mm,
I feel sorry for those 11% of people who did have something wrong like that, because I must say, I wouldn't,
11%.
I don't like the sound of that. That, the roof could cave in or the floor just, disappear from under your feet, walls fall down.
So this is like major structural problems, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I see. Because I thought, structural. I thought maybe the figure would be higher because I know a few people that experience a lot of issues, but maybe not major structural
Mm.
problems. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting that there's at least it's not as high as, um it may have been or could be. So that's a bonus, but still,
Well,
we've
this
got.
is
Oh, go ahead, Joseph.
this is like major structural problems after the house has been built, right? This is without any sort of natural hurricane or storms or anything like that.
I'm guessing it is because I think then it's somewhat expected that there would be some damage. But talking about natural disasters, I guess that's actually one of the things I really love looking at is natural disasters and documentaries on wild weather and stuff like that. Have you guys ever looked into something like that?
Um, I suppose, it's always on the news these days about the
Mm.
um, weather and climate change and all that kind of stuff. So I suppose, it's a cause for concern. A lot of people are concerned that weather patterns are getting more erratic.
Mm.
Um, and suppose people with yeah, got to be careful, I suppose, if you got a dodgy house.
Definitely. Well, I used to, well, I went through like all the different episodes that I could find for free on YouTube and Daily Motion a while ago. But I was watching Tornado Alley, and oh, it was so interesting. It was like the survivor stories of being in some of the worst tornadoes in the United States.
Mm.
And I learned a lot from that. Like, it is so good, like just the way it's explained. And it had to do with housing as well. Because if you don't have a firm foundation, if you don't have good structure to your house,
Yeah.
your chances of surviving a bad tornado aren't looking good. So, okay, I'm going to ask a question that kind of seems obvious. Would you guys rather be in a very sturdy, well-built home or in a caravan
Mm.
when a tornado, or here in Australia we get cyclones? If one of those was to come through, where would you want to be found? Joseph, where would you want to be found? You're
You're
muted
on
at the
mute,
moment.
Joseph. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I would like to be in a caravan because you can't drive away with your house.
Well, I was on my way back from up north, and I stopped in a little town called Port Denison, and we were in a camper trailer, not a caravan. And that night, 75 gusts per hour winds came through, and felt that thing was going to lift off the ground. And I've heard of stories like in Carnarvon, where caravans, the entire caravans, are picked up off the ground and flung away by these tornadoes. And a tornado came through recently. So, I mean, I suppose, you probably want one of those houses in Tornado Alley, as you mentioned in Delphi, the ones with a solid structure. Because
Mhm.
even if you probably can drive away, but how far can you get before a tornado catches up with you? Um,
Mm.
yeah, I've seen that movie Tornado actually. That was pretty scary
Mm.
because there
Well,
was like there was a cow in the middle of the tornado. I remember seeing that cow going around like,
yeah.
"Arr."
Honestly, in Tornado Alley, I remember them showing like when there'd be like semi trucks just being hurtled through the air because of this. And how fast did you say the wind was going when you were at Port Denison?
I think it's 75 miles per hour. Or was it gust? I can't
Okay.
remember.
Well, I've just looked up how fast can winds in a tornado get, and they said up to and more than, in very extreme tornadoes, over 480 kilometers an hour.
Right.
So
That's
if a camper trailer is being, let's say, shaken very violently in 75-kilometer winds,
mm,
I don't know how I would feel if it was going 148 kilometers instead.
yeah.
So I remember one of the episodes though on Tornado Alley was about one man who was living in an on-site caravan, sorry. And honestly, his place was taken. His wife almost died, and it was just a whole disaster. And everywhere where a tornado goes, there is disaster. But how much better would it be if you had a cellar or like a well-built home to
Mm,
go to rather than just being here? And I was wondering, can we learn a life lesson from buildings, I guess, in a tornado-prone area?
mm. Well, here in Western Australia, we don't really get many down this side. I mean, we do get
Yeah.
fires, we don't get many floods, and we don't get many earthquakes, thankfully. So I think
Mm.
in a way we've become a little bit complacent in that most of the foundations that are built here are actually built on sand. I find that quite
Yeah.
amazing. That the ground is excavated, and then sand is brought in, and then the sand is compacted, and then the foundation is actually built on the sand. So,
Mm.
if there was supposed to be a tornado, I'm not sure how well that sand would hold the house down.
Yeah.
Mm,
Definitely. I guess, as you're saying, we're blessed here where we are. We don't, as one friend was saying, he's from Christchurch in New Zealand. He's like, people in Christchurch, they understand that, the weather patterns and stuff like that's getting worse, with all the earthquakes that they've been through. And, you can look at other places like Tornado Alley when they go through stacks of tornadoes, you've got hurricanes, people up in the north of Australia get the cyclones as well. So there are some people who have it worse than us, and for us it's just like, oh, that's just the thing you see on the news. Joseph, what do you have to share?
It's good that we're talking about tornadoes, but I remember as a kid singing the Bible song, and the rains came down and the floods came up. The rains came down and the floods came up. And then, for example, if the rains did come and the floods did come up all the way up to your doorstep, and then what's going to happen to your sandy foundation? What's going to happen to your house?
I don't actually know. I mean, it's a good question, but I don't actually know the answer to that.
Well, I guess it would do a lot of damage because, like, even here where we are, we're on like clay and sand, and there can actually be like a lot of cracking in the walls because of the shifting of the ground. That's not even like earthquake level yet, but you can imagine that a lot of damage can be done. And Joseph, you also brought up the song of the wise and foolish builders, which is where I want to head next in Matthew chapter 7. We're going to be starting off at verse 24. And this is about two guys. We know like roughly the story, but maybe there's some viewers who don't. So we'll just go through it. And this is Jesus speaking. He says, "So then, everyone who hears these words of mine and obeys them is like a wise man who built his house on a rock." Verse 25 now. "The rain poured down and the rivers flooded over and the wind blew hard against that house, but it did not fall because it was built on a rock. But anyone who hears these words of mine and does not obey them is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain poured down, the rivers flooded over, and the wind blew hard against that house, and it fell. And what a terrible fall that was."
Wow.
To me, those kind of sound like the conditions that they would describe on Tornado Alley when I used to watch that, with what the hurricanes were like. You've got this rain, you've got this wind. And it gives two examples of different guys and their building strategies. Reading through, we can see what happened with each one. But what do you guys think about these two particular guys? Joseph, what do you think?
I think it's like on later on in that verse, it says, "And so it was when Jesus had ended these sayings that the people were astonished at his teaching, for he had taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes." I think it's because like the parable that he talks of is like relatable. It's because like I like how Jesus talks, because there's like three ways of people how they learn. It's like visual, auditory, and what's the other one? It's like
auditory and by listening.
Yeah,
and then
so
the other one is
auditory,
by doing.
visual,
Doing.
and then doing
Practically.
practically, and I think there's another one where it's like a mixed anyway, it's like by feeling. And that when Jesus tells us, when you tell a story, it encompasses those three: visual, audio, and also like emotionally, like feeling and development. So it really applied to all of those. And when the wise man built his house on the rock, of course, that's quite symbolic to the people like the scribes who knew what the rock meant, and the sand for the farmers and for the fishermen and for the demographic of his time, because there was no insurance back then. You can't insure your house and say, "Oh, I'm just going to insure my house and then the bank's going to pay me because it's all good and all true." So you need to understand the context for that. So that's what I get from it briefly.
Okay. Jason, what do you think about this story?
Thanks for that context, Joseph, because I think it's important to look at the, the reason why Jesus was saying it, the whole story, and he was giving them basically his words as the foundation for their, their society, their home. And
Mm,
I think when you look at society today, I mean, there's quite a few different angles people come from when you look at the foundation of your thought processes. Where do you come from? Like if you go all the way back to the how did I get here?
mm,
You realize that that's your foundation. And a child might go to school and they may teach them that, well, actually you originated from a monkey or whatever it is, evolution again. But um, Jesus is saying that the most important is the foundation, which comes from what I'm giving you. My words
mm,
are the important foundations here. And Joseph said in his background statement is that the Jews would have understood that when he says building your house on the rock, because they knew that rock would have represented Christ. And
mm,
I think in 1 Corinthians 3:11, Jesus says, Paul says, for other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. So he
mm,
is saying that he is that foundation, he is that secure, that rock that will make your home or your house secure.
mm. That's really interesting. And some people may go, it's a story either about building or about the folk back in Jesus' day. But how does it apply to us today? Where it's what is actually being said so that we can go and read this story and actually also be astonished at what Christ has said and realize, wow, this so has to do with me, and this is so beneficial to my life. It's life changing, life altering, and I will never be the same again.
Mm.
How
Yeah.
can we get that?
Well, for me, I see that the home is, and this is like a quote I heard from Adventist Home, the book Adventist Home.
Hmm.
Home is the heart of society. So basically, every individual in society has to come from somewhere, right? And your home is supposed to be that place where is comprised of your families, and that your families make up the community in which you live, and your community makes up society, and that makes up the nation per se. And so
Hmm.
the nations are actually made up of people in the home. Yeah.
Hmm. Joseph, what do you think about how this can apply to us today with, what Christ is trying to say to us?
Mm. I think it applies well because I think it's not just like when the Bible was written and how Jesus explained it, it encompasses everyone before him. It's understood by people during the time, and it's even understood now. So, taken from the book of Psalms 18, in the first couple of verses, David says, I will love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my
Mm,
deliverer, my God, my strength in whom I trust,
mm,
my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So
Mm.
shall I be saved from my enemies.
mm. That's really interesting, that passage where you can see the different things that David sees in God, and how we can go and link that with this passage, with this story that Christ has shared. Because I see it in another way. I like what Jason shared, where it's the home, which is the foundation of the society, and the society of the community. The church is also a part of that, and there's all these different things that make up the nation, and it's got to start at the bottom and then work up. But another way I see it is that we have a character to build, And we need to go and build our character and our lives on Christ, on God, and then build. So God is the foundation of our lives, then we build up on that. And then there is a storm coming where everyone, it will be seen if, have you done a good job of building your house? Is it going to last when there's going to be winds, where there's going to be hard times coming in your life? What can some of those things be that can be a storm in our lives that may test our characters? What do you guys think?
Marriage. Even though I'm not married, so I wouldn't know. But I think that could be one.
Wait. Are you saying marriage is a storm?
I think I mean, when you're in the eye of the storm, it's peaceful.
Okay. Look, I don't really, to be quite honest, I think marriage is supposed to be the foundation as well, part of the foundation, right, of society. Because without having a good family structure, you can, we see what's happening as a result. Like we see a lot of experiments where there are, single parents, and we think you're doing a great job, but to be quite honest, you need that structure. You need a good fatherly discipline, advice, father to be, you know, patient, that kindness to nurture the child, or children in a way, and you need that mother as well. You do need both of those to have a good sort of family structure. And I suppose marriage is supposed to be that foundation. So when you sort of build that based on the words of God and you're doing them, then you can have a good family structure. And without a good family structure, you cannot have a good nation. So we've sort of discovered that. But in terms of storm, right? Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that can destroy that, in terms of things that come to test us, like finances can be pretty big
Finance is the
storm.
big one. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of relationships break up because of financial issues, financial stress. Um, communication as well. Communication is a pretty big one. A lot of people just go, well, this is just not working. We're not connecting on the same level. Intimacy as well could be huge. And I think, like, so that's for marriage, but when it comes to society as well, we can have the same issues, like, connecting with people, even in your workplaces. Because if we don't learn those, important values of, listening to people, like when they're talking, and not just listen so you can respond, but listen so you can hear what they're saying, and feel what they're feeling, because ultimately when someone's trying to communicate their difficulties with you, they're trying to let you see where they're at. I'm trying to put you in my shoes, but you're like, I just want to respond. I just want to put my point across,
Yeah.
and I think if these behaviors are not developed from an early age, it can be a big issue for society, and we can see things start to crumble.
Yeah, so as basically what I said as well, and you guys have shared a couple of things, there is a lot of things that can build into a storm in our lives. And then, like, in the end, when all is said and done, are you going to be better off? Like, after the storm's passed over and there's peace again. So we could go and take this and say, okay, when this time in life is done, our storms have been passed over, will I be still standing when Christ comes? Or will my building of character, my building of my home, will it be all washed away? So when God comes back, I don't have anything to show. Jason, what is your idea?
So, can I just jump in, Joseph, quickly, only because I remembered something in regards to that, the marriage thing. I was reading some statistics just last week saying that the rate of divorce since the COVID pandemic has gone
Mm.
through the roof, So COVID has been a storm for many people,
Yeah.
not just in marriage, but also in sort of just living. A lot of people have actually end up taking their own lives
Mm.
because of COVID.
Yeah.
So pestilence is a storm. We know that
Mm.
war as well is a storm, for society. There's a lot
Mm.
of people who are experiencing a lot of upheaval, particularly in Russia and Ukraine, and that's also affecting a lot of people here as well,
Mm.
that this war can be a massive storm. And I appreciate your question there, Delphia, is like, well, where are you going to stand at the end of it? Are you going to be safe? Are you going to be, counted in the first resurrection? Are you going to still have your relationship with Christ intact? Are you still
Mm.
going to be a sane person, or are you going to just give up in the end, or find yourself
Yeah.
crumbling? Yeah.
And Joseph, you had your hand up before. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts basically was that some people listening to the podcast might think, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me because, we got insurance now, doesn't really matter. So my thoughts to that is that whether you have insurance or not, don't think it's not your responsibility, because you have a responsibility as a household owner to make sure that your foundation is good. What is
Mm.
even the purpose? You're wasting your money paying for insurance every single month or so. Does that mean you're going to neglect your foundation?
Yeah.
Mm.
You need to make sure your foundation is strong. And if something happens to that house, if something happens to that household, ultimately you're responsible.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just jump on that as well? I mean, I think it's interesting that Joseph's brought up insurance here, because in a first world country where we are, we've just become so complacent in regards to, like, yeah, insurance will take care of it. Um, and I had a friend who recently, in that the storm happened a few weeks ago, she had a tree falling down on her shed, and she just called
Mm.
up the insurance company. The guys were there the next day. They chopped that tree up and left her firewood, and repaired the shed. And that was like, in like 24 hours. But,
Mm.
like, you can insure your property, right? But, and you can insure your life. But how about death insurance? What's
Mm.
going to happen if you die? Do you know? Are you going to be safe? Are you going to be saved? Have
Mm.
you built on the foundation of Christ? Have you taken his words to heart?
Mm.
That's the question I want to ask the listeners. So yes, we can have all of this modern things, but what about when it comes to life eternal? Are we ensured that we've
Mm.
got that insured?
Mm. I like how you pulled that up as well. And I think, it's time that we wrap up. We've had a good session. And kind of just condensing it into, I guess, two sections: the way that we can remember it, and then what it can remind us of. So, you're there in one of the states that Tornado Alley runs through, and you've got the choice of either building basically maybe a stump home, a home on stilts, or you can build a really strong foundation and have like a brick home with a cellar or a bunker that you can go into. And
Mm,
you've got to choose. And a local tells you, hey, look, this is how I built my house. It's withstood every single tornado that's come through. I'll give you some hints. You can either choose to go with what they say, or you can say, nah, I think I have plenty enough idea, even though I've never lived in an area that has tornadoes or cyclones or earthquakes or anything like that. I'm just gonna go with what I feel like. I like my stump home, and I'm gonna build a stump home. Or you could go, that's a really good idea. I'm gonna take your advice, considering that you've gone through tornadoes and your house is still standing and you're still standing. I'll take your advice. And in the the practical for each one of us. We are building a foundation, and we can either choose to have it on God or on the bits and pieces of the world. And sand is bits and pieces of rock. So you may even be Christian and not be building on the rock.
Mm.
So, and then Jesus comes along and he says, look, I've gone through this life. I lived a perfect life. I withstood every single storm that's come through. I'll give you some hints and tips about how to build your home so that you can go and last to the very end as well. And he goes and shows you through his means, his ideas in the Bible. The whole Bible is God's ideas on how to build a home, on how to build your character to stand strong until the very end. So it's your choice. Do you go through with what Christ has said and build your home on a very firm foundation, or do you go, it doesn't matter, I've got my life insurance apparently that is going to cover me? It's your choice in the end. And guys, I want to go and see what your final thoughts are. I just thought that I'd go and kind of condense it all into a short package for everyone to remember. Joseph, we'll start off with you. What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts. Okay. So I just wanted to remind everyone, it was a really good story with the wise and foolish builder. Wise, rock; foolish, sand. Who's your foundation built on? And who? Jesus is the rock to our foundation. And yes, we may have insurance, but ultimately God gives us freedom, and freedom equals love. And because he loves us so much, it's our choice where we want to build our foundation. And we can build it on something firm that will stand everlastingly, or that will fall ultimately. And just to reiterate, couple verses, Isaiah 26 verse 4, trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord God is an everlasting rock. And then also Jason's Bible verse, 1 Corinthians 3:11, for no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. So I want to uplift God, praise him, thank him for giving us the opportunity to be built on him, and for the trust and love to support us in the very end. So just want to urge people who want to learn a bit more, comment down below, like us, listen to any of other podcasts that we've done in the past. And if you want us to do part 2 or something like this, then just comment down below. So thanks.
Yeah.
And Jason, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, for me, before I give my final thoughts, right, I just want to reiterate the importance of what the foundation is. And Jesus, he said, it is about my words, but not just listening to them, doing them. He that does these things is considered to be a wise builder. So yeah, we can hear all the, the fancy, we can go to church every Sabbath or Sunday and we can listen to them. But unless we're doing them, then we're still considered to be foolish builders. And unless we're constantly following and doing these things, then we're going to be tested when the storm comes. And I just like to just to plug, like, that I mentioned about Matthew chapter 24. It talks about pestilence and how many people lost their lives in the pestilence that just gone, COVID-19. But this is not the only storm that's coming. Yes, war is there as well. There's also famine on the horizon, There's also earthquakes. And we are told, like in Matthew, that these are the beginning of sorrows, which means that this storm is going to be really dreadful. And unless we have that firm foundation, we won't make it, All of our household goods will be lost. I remember when the fires came through, and so many people lost everything in those fires. I mean, and I feel horrible for the people that lost everything, because, all your life work is just, your pictures, your memories, kids, everything just gone. And we don't want to be part of that people that sort of lose everything. We want to make sure that we have a firm foundation in that it is, is upon Jesus Christ. Because we're told that there's a storm coming, it's relentless in its fury. And we didn't just want to encourage everyone to build a foundation. Myself as well, need to spend more time building that foundation. If anything, want to have my foundation so deep, it is like a bunker, be like one of those in Tornado Alley, where people can just go down there and hide away from whatever is coming. So, yeah, those are my final thoughts. Thanks, Delphia.
Awesome, no worries. So as Joseph had mentioned before, with the song, the rains came down, the floods came up. The last verse of that song is, so build your life on the Lord Jesus Christ and the blessings will come down. And I think, we get bonuses and benefits from having our insurance with Christ and also using him as our builder, our architect, and our main contractor in the building of our characters in this life, so that whatever's to come, as Jason said, there's more things that are coming than what we can imagine, not to be a thing of fear, but to have the tornado warning go off beforehand so you have time to get into that bunker. So just, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know that I did, and very fascinating. Thank you both for coming on with Joseph and Jason. Make sure to go and visit our social media accounts, and you can find us on all the major podcast platforms as well as on YouTube as well. So until next time, God bless and stay safe. Bye.
God bless. Bye.
Yeah.